What is up, everybody? Welcome to Football Diehards. I'm here, as always, with Jamie. Going to be talking about Week 18, probably one of the craziest weeks, if not the craziest week of the year this year. Yeah. Jamie, what is up? You're looking forward to the last week of the regular season?
Yeah, I'm glad we have one too. It's weird to say Week 18, but we got we'll get past all the like the who's playing for something. That's kind of the name of the game this week. Which teams have something to play for, and then there's the individual contract incentives to look at. So it's an added element of fun for us in DFS.
Yeah, for sure. How was your Week 17 last week?
I did well. I didn't have any Jamar Chase anywhere, so it wasn't a big win anywhere. But won my all my double ups and most of my head to heads pretty handily. So the cash game did well. I don't remember the score. How was your Week 17?
Yeah, it was good. This last month and a half, 2 months is probably my best stretch ever in NFL DFS. I think it's like 6, 7 weeks in a row where the cash has been hitting, singles been hitting, and haven't got quite there in tournaments. But cash is what's most important to me, doubling up in the single. But yeah, it was almost really close to a big week last week. We talked about it before the stream. Ronald Jones gets hurt, but I everything else was perfect in my lineups outside of Ronald Jones, which sucks because 2 weeks ago, it was James Robinson, where all I needed was James Robinson to not put up one for a big week. So back-to-back weeks, somebody got hurt. Hopefully, it doesn't make 3 weeks in a row. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, I know, and I'm with you too. It's been a really good stretch. So hopefully, and the good part is, hopefully, if people have been listening to us here, they've been making the same plays because I've been pretty much building my playbooks on players we talk about and agree on. So hopefully we're not the only ones here.
Yeah, for sure. Been a great stretch. Let's keep it going into Week 18. As always, on a Friday, we'll go by position here. And then on Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning, we'll go game by game, 13 games to talk about on Sunday. But yeah, position by position, as always, we'll start with the quarterbacks. Up top, we have Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow's not going to play, it looks like, and then Lamar Jackson's not going to play. So out of Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Josh Allen, who are you liking up top this week?
Got to be Josh Allen. So the Bills are in a chance that the range of seeding for them is as wide as I think I've seen going into the last week of a season. So they can get as high as number 2. And they can go as low as number 7 if some things fall against them. So they're going to be one of the teams that are going all out to win against the Jets. It's a great matchup where the Jets are 30th in yards per play allowed. When you consider Allen's rushing attack as well, and then remember that you're facing the Jets, they've given up 26 touchdowns on the ground this year, and also the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. So I'm trying to do early builds, and I'm finding it's virtually impossible to get up to Allen in cash, but I will have some Bills stacks in GPP. And if you are paying up for quarterback in cash, he'd be my guy. What about you?
Yeah, on a Friday as well. It's between Josh Allen and another guy we'll talk about that's cheaper for my cash quarterback there. But yeah, if I'm paying up for a quarterback, it's going to be Josh Allen this week. You mentioned it. The Bills definitely have something to play for, and then you're going against the Jets. You're at home. Very, very good matchup for Josh Allen. You mentioned the rushing yard upside as well. You cannot go wrong with Josh Allen. He is the most expensive quarterback on the slate. And yeah, it is tough to get there for sure, especially if you want to play like a Cup or a Taylor, which I'm sure we both do. But yeah, if I can go up and get Josh Allen, it's going to be him. Aaron Rodgers, don't really want to get there. Tom Brady, same thing with him. But I think Kyler Murray could also be interesting against Seattle. He's cheap, 7,400. Has not looked the best, the last few weeks, but he's throwing the ball a lot, has that rushing yard upside as always, and on top of that, it's a good matchup. So I guess Kyler Murray would be the other guy to be looking at. Josh Allen coming in as the first projected highest owned here on a Friday at 13%. Kyler Murray right behind him at the second highest owned projected quarterback at 11%. So it looks like people are on the same page, liking Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Any thoughts on Kyler Murray? You liking him as well?
Yeah, I like that call for sure. They're another one that can get up to 2 if they win the NFC West and fall think to 5 or 6. I don't remember it offhand here. I had it, but yeah, they're definitely in that realm for sure. So I think he's definitely an accurate pivot. And even if you need that 700 savings, he has Allen's upside. So I like that call as well.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like it's, I don't know if you feel the same way. It's like easier to stack Kyler Murray because you have Christian Kirk, very easy stacking option. You have Zach Ertz, really easy stacking option. Where with the Bills, it gets kind of tricky to stack, especially, you have Stephon Diggs, who's like really expensive, and then Cole Beasley, guys like that, McKenzie, guys like that. So I really like Murray and stacking up this week.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was kind of hoping, I'm looking at our ownership, and we've talked about the top 2 guys here. So I was hoping Murray would come in a little bit less than Allen, because I do think people are going to be all over the Bills offense, and possibly the Arizona offense falls a little bit to the wayside. But right now it's not looking that way. So that'll be an ownership thing to watch as we go along. But as it stands right now, Murray is under Allen, so that is leverage.
Yep, and he's cheaper as well, which I do like, saving some salary there. But in terms of this mid-range for quarterbacks, is anything sticking out to you? There's one guy I do like a little bit, but for quarterback, it's weird this week. I like Josh Allen and Murray up top, but outside of that, there's not a ton I love.
Yeah, there's a few in the cheaper range that I'm looking at here. I mean, if we're in this mid range, I don't know how cheap we're going if we're talking values here. So I kind of just talk about Taysom Hill real quick. He's another one that the rushing floor is unique to the quarterback position, and he's facing Atlanta, who is last in sack rate, last in pressure rate, 31st in QB hits, and the Saints. They need to win and have the 49ers lose to the Rams to make the playoffs. So there's no danger in any Saints resting.
Yep, he's that one guy. He's the one guy I'm looking at potentially playing him in cash. I mean, he's like you mentioned, the rushing yard upside, and then on top of that, they have something to play for. On top of that, they're going against Atlanta. A very good matchup there. So Taysom Hill is the one guy I'm looking at if I am paying down for a quarterback. He is coming in at the 12th projected highest owned at about 2.98%. So very low owned there. If that sticks, I really like that.
Yeah, so do I. And that's the thing with him too, is he's not a quarterback you have to stack with either. So,
Yes.
you can like in the rest of the lineups, if he stays that low and you want to use him in GPPs, obviously he's good in cash, even at a low ownership. But if you want to use him in GPPs, you can just use him at quarterback and then just stack, opposing wide receivers or a running back against a wide receiver in a game and not worry about the quarterback eating up salary in that one. So that's a fun little. We'll have to watch that ownership too.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned you like some other guys down in this range. Who you liking?
Yeah, there's a couple of cheap guys that I'm looking at too, and I'd like to get to Taysom Hill if I can right now. But if I got to drop even more, I'm comfortable going with Tyler Huntley at 5,700. The Pittsburgh pass rush worries me a little because Baltimore has given up the most sacks this year, and TJ Watt's going for the sack record as well. But he's rushed for 222 yards on the season and 2 touchdowns. So he kind of fits the same mold that Lamar Jackson is. He's not Lamar Jackson, but he's not bad either. And then we're going to have to keep an eye on. Have you heard anything about Garoppolo? Because Trey Lance is 5,500 again. He's only come up 700 after his game, and he was perfectly fine for me in cash last week. They're another team, they haven't clinched a playoff spot yet, so if he's the starter, I'm good with him in cash as well.
Yeah, it looks like Jimmy G has been practicing in limited capacity. So yeah, I definitely do like that. Yeah, he's questionable, but yeah, you brought up 2 good guys. I don't mind some Huntley. I don't mind stacking with Mark Andrews. Somebody we'll talk about. Huntley has been throwing the ball a lot, and he's been looking good. I remember playing him a couple weeks back. Against the Rams, and he did pretty well there. Other than that, going down, I mean, this is kind of intriguing. Big Ben against Baltimore, like one of the best matchups you can ask for. Like that's interesting at 5,400. Ben's last game ever. That's kind of intriguing. I mean, he throws the ball a ton. It's just he's not good at all. But the price does intrigue me a little bit.
Yeah, I like that call. We've been picking on the Baltimore pass defense for several weeks in a row now. Like you said, he's not he's not the quarterback to like light up the stage around him. But I do believe Deontay Johnson was activated off the COVID list, so he should be good. Yeah, he has, so that helps. If he was out, I was probably gonna lean away from this, but I like that call too.
Yeah, so that's about it for me. Was there any other guy that we didn't talk about that kind of stuck out to you?
No, I think that's really kind of covering it. Tannehill, I guess, is okay at 6,000 with the the Titans are in a big spot here. They have to win to clinch the number 1 seed. So I expect there's going to be more running in that one, but I don't mind him, stacked with AJ Brown in GPP there. I think that's a pretty high upside spot.
Yeah, for sure. Looks like Tannehill is coming in at the fourth projected highest on quarterback, about 6.69%. Other than that, we talked about. Didn't mention Kirk Cousins. I actually don't hate some Kirk Cousins this week. Against Chicago, he's coming in about 3% owned. Taysom Hill, we talked about that 2% owned. Ben Roethlisberger, 1% owned. There we go. But yeah, I think that's about it for quarterback. So let's take a look at the running back here. And up top, we have Jonathan Taylor, 9,300, Alvin Kamara, 8,300, Nick Chubb, 7,900, Dalvin Cook, 78, Aaron Jones, 73, Najee Harris, 72. And yeah, it looks like Mixon's not going to play. And then, so yeah, that's the top range here. And for me, it's Jonathan Taylor. I love the matchup against Jacksonville. They have something to play for as well. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to have a monster week this week against Jacksonville. Last time they did play Jacksonville was back in Week 10. Jonathan Taylor had 21 rushing attempts, 116 yards, 8 targets, 6 receptions as well. So yeah, I really do like Jonathan Taylor, 9,300. It's not easy to get him in your lineup. He's 9,300. He's very expensive, but if I'm able to do it, I have no problem getting him in there. And how we kind of talked about it last week, you said you were able to fit in Taylor and Kupp, which was great. This week, it seems like it's going to be a lot harder because they did price up Kupp 9,700 and Taylor 9,300. Are you planning on doing that again? It seems really hard, but is it possible?
Even with, I expected coming in that it was going to be easy to do, because just expecting with like teams resting players that we'd be able to play enough of their backups that I could build around the two of them. It's not happening unless we get some major shenanigans over the next 48 hours. You got to pick one or the other. And I talked about this on the radio last night on Sirius XM with Bob and Mike. The last couple of weeks we said, Kupp or Taylor, and then we wound up being able to fit both. But right now, I don't know where you stand. I mean, we can talk about Kupp in detail when we get to wide receivers. I'm again leading the way of Kupp over Taylor, which is so tough to say because you brought it up. The Colts have to win. The Jags have allowed the third most touchdowns. I mean, you got to figure Taylor's going to get 25 to 30 carries in this. I'm just a little bit nervous that he's got 4 targets over the last 4 games. And the 49ers secondary is like all out with COVID. So, I mean, we'll get into Kupp a little bit more in the wide receiver section, but he's my pick over Taylor of the two of them. But obviously Taylor is once again in a tier of his own.
100%. I mean, for me, it's really 50-50. I think for me, it's going to be, if I am able to, get a lot of these running backs that I like that are cheaper that we'll talk about, I have no problem going up and getting Kupp. But if there are, cheap wide receivers that I like, I have no problem getting Taylor. It's like 50-50. Whatever fits really is probably going to be my strategy this week. I think they're both great plays. Other than that, I mean, if I'm paying up for a running back, it's going to be Jonathan Taylor. I don't have interest in Kamara against Atlanta. I know it's a great matchup, but Taysom Hill has been hurting Kamara. Dalvin Cook's interesting against Chicago. Any interest in Dalvin Cook? And I'm just staying away from Nick Chubb.
Yeah, no chance I'm playing Chubb. Cook for sure. although they're out of it too. So there is, there's at least that risk, I guess, at least that um, players like Cook and Jefferson may get the plug pulled on them early or something like that. So that's strictly a GPP play. I wouldn't do it in cash. Absolutely, if you're paying up for running back in cash, you go up to Taylor. But we are seeing, Cook is getting ownership. 7,800 is certainly a good price tag for him. So yeah, I probably will have some exposure to him in this week, just because of the price and the matchup. But it's kind of Taylor or bust for paying up for me.
Yeah, and it's going to be really hard, you got to imagine, to go up there and try to fit both Taylor and Cook in your lineup or both Taylor and Harris in your lineup, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taylor coming in at 17%, Dalvin Cook coming in at 14%. I'm trying to find Najee Harris. It was another guy that kind of sticks out, 4%. Any interest in Najee Harris, 7,200?
I like him better than Cook and Kamara just simply because Pittsburgh has so much to play for. And it's not the best matchup for him. Baltimore is much better against the run than they are against the pass, but he's cheaper. We know there's no worry about anything with his workload. So, yeah, if I'm choosing, I'm taking him over both Cook and Kamara and being happy I'm getting a discount out of it too.
Yep, he's a big part of the offense, that pass catching upside. Like I said, not the best match for Lure, but he is very involved. So 7,200, I do like that. And he's coming in at a very low ownership, which is very interesting for tournaments. So that's the top range. I think we're on board that, if we're going up, it's got to be Taylor, 9,300. But talk about the mid-range a little bit. Who's somebody that's really sticking out to you?
Well, we have to watch. I said this on the radio last night. Watch the Cardinals' running back situation closely because Connor was practicing on a limited basis, and Edmonds wasn't practicing at all. Since then, Edmonds has been ruled out. So if Connor plays, he's a 3-down back that was getting Edmonds' target share while Edmonds was out the last time too, and at 6,300. In a huge game for the Cardinals against the Seahawks that have been trucked by running backs all season, you're going to be hard pressed to get me away from him in this one. It's at 6,300.
I 110% agree. It's something we're going to be looking out for. But yeah, if Connor does play, great matchup against Seattle. Seattle has given the second most DraftKings points to opposing running backs. Connor has that touchdown upside. I can't believe the amount of times this guy has scored this year, 16 times. Like, that's nuts. So touchdown upside, great matchup. I hope he does play, because if he does, I really like James Conner at 6,300. A little bit above, I think David Montgomery is interesting against Minnesota. He is more expensive than I'd like, 6,800, but he's another guy that I do like. He's been looking really good as of late, and then a solid matchup. Any interest in Montgomery, and then anybody interested in any of the other guys in the 6K range?
Yeah, those are my two guys, and that's a big reason why I'm okay with going Kupp over Taylor, is because if Connor is in, I'm perfectly fine playing Montgomery and Connor in my two running back spots. Montgomery is averaging 23.3 touches over the last 6 games, and he's inside too in Minnesota. That's big when you're playing football in January, where the weather can really affect things. So yeah, you got the two there. And I also like Sony Michel. Again, a must-win for the Rams. He's only 6,000. I think they are expecting Cam Akers to play, but I can't imagine he impacts Michel that much. The guy tore his Achilles five months ago. You're not supposed to be playing football right now, so I'm okay with Michel as well too at 6,000. Anyone else for you guys? And are you on Team Michel again? Oh, I do have another one to ask you about, but go ahead.
Yeah, like, this range is kind of stacked, so I kind of agree with you where, I'm perfectly fine getting, a couple of these guys and then going and getting Kupp at wide receiver. But yeah, you mentioned it. Sony Michel, the backfield is his. Been riding this guy the last couple of weeks. He's been looking phenomenal. And then Singletary would be another guy I do like against the Jets. They're at home. They're favored. Singletary has kind of taken over the backfield, 23 rushing attempts last week against Atlanta, which was a great matchup. And he gets an even better matchup this week. He's 6K. I like it. He scored at least He scored at least 14.9 in the last 4 weeks, 14.9 against Tampa Bay, 16.6 against Carolina, which two very good defenses, and then it's 18.8 against New England, very good defense, 26 against Atlanta, and then now one of the best matchups you could possibly ask for. So I really like Singletary. And then also Eli Mitchell at 6K. So this 6K range, like I have a ton of interest in.
Yeah, Singletary is the one I was going to ask you about because it just feels so disgusting to play him just with his past. But I mean, you're right. All of a sudden he has that role in Buffalo. We always have to worry about when they get inside the 5, him not getting the touchdown. That's always the downside that comes with him. And that's why I think we're not seeing him as high owned. Oh, we are. He's 6th highest owned. So yeah, people are on running backs against the Jets, and I'm fine with that. And even, I mean, there's more too. Like, we get Antonio Gibson back. It's a meaningless game, but 5,800 against the Giants, that's a great spot. Dante Foreman, 5,700 against the Texans in a must-win game to clinch the 1 seed for Tennessee. He is another one that worries me a little bit with his lack of receiving role. He doesn't have a target in the last 2 weeks, and they do run 3 running backs, but he had 26 carries last week and 22 carries 3 weeks ago against Pittsburgh. So I think the role might be there for him too. You got any interest in either of those guys?
Yep, both of them actually, especially Gibson. And it looks like a lot of people have interest in Gibson. He's coming in at the highest projected owned at 20%. So yeah, Gibson would probably be my favorite 5K running back by a decent margin. But you mentioned Foreman, also another great play with a good matchup. Kind of a weird one I'll throw at you. DeAndre Swift is 5,900. Came back last week. He was 6K. I thought he was, way too cheap then. Did not have the best game. Did not get used a ton. But any interest maybe going back to him this week against Green Bay as a very low-owned option? Maybe he gets more involved in the offense, more involved than he was last week.
I'm probably not going to use him just because there are so many other options. But, he's a tough one right now because they really don't have any incentive to just, throw him out there. But I mean, that price tag for that guy is screaming upside. So if you tell me you're playing Swift in a GPP, I wouldn't tell you not to, but I'm probably not going to do it.
Yeah, it's just the price tag is interesting. Like this was a guy that was, getting into the 7Ks at one point, looking phenomenal. And it kind of just, had that injury, came back, didn't do anything last week. Nobody's going to play him this week. Something to take note of there. There was another guy that I did want to mention. Any interest in Keyshawn Vaughn? Looks like Jones is going to be out. Vaughn should be leading the backfield here. Not a great matchup against Carolina. But any interest in him at 5,300?
Yeah, I'll be honest. He hadn't really crossed my radar. But you're right. I mean, Jones, Fournette, and Giovanni Bernard are all out, right? So he's shown that he can be involved in the passing game. They have Le'Veon Bell too. I don't know what what we're supposed to expect his role to be for them. But yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. Especially for a Bucks team that is banged up and whatever category you want to group Antonio Brown in in the passing game. So I kind of like that call actually.
Yeah, but yeah, as we talked about, like this running back, down in this range is stacked. Like I really like Antonio Gibson. I really like David Montgomery. I really like Devin Singletary, and I really like James Conner this play. So yeah, I have no problem, getting away from Jonathan Taylor and playing some of these cheaper guys and then fitting in Cup. I think that's a good strategy this week.
Yeah, I think as of right now, that's probably the way I'm going to play this. There's just so many of them, and you've intrigued me with the Vaughn call. And I'll throw one more. I think Michael Carter is viable at 5,000. Not a good matchup against the Bills, but he's involved in the passing game. And if you're stacking Bills and you want to bring it back with anybody, I think he'd be the guy I'd use.
Yep, don't hate that. Another weird one I'll kind of throw out there. Don't know if I'll get to him, but Rex Burkhead, tough matchup. But man, this guy has been getting the ball a lot. But he had 22 touches last week. He had 24 touches in week 16. He had 17 in week 15. So they're using him a lot. It's just his Texans offense is not great. But Burkhead 5,200. He's cheap. Nobody's going to have him. I think he's interesting as well. But yeah, I don't think I'll get there that much.
One thing I'll throw in with him too is I have my little list of contract incentives here for some of the individual players. He needs to play 30% of the offensive snaps to earn 125,000, and he needs 103 total yards to earn another 125,000. So, for a meaningless team, that's something that I can see Burkhead aspiring to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the touches that have been there. The touches have been there. Maybe not the results. I know he had a great week against the Chargers, scoring 31.9 DraftKings points. But yeah, we'll see what happens. That's interesting for sure. Any other running back that does stick out? I think that's about it for me.
Yeah, I think we did a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot in that mid range.
Yeah, the running back range, especially that range, is stacked this week. But we'll talk about some wide receivers now. Up top, we have Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Deontay Johnson, T. Higgins, Mike Evans, and A.J. Brown in that top range there. Who are you liking the best? I have a feeling I know who you're going to say.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not much more for us to say about Kupp. The only thing I will say again with the incentives for him is he himself has already said that if he breaks any kind of records, it's not real because it's a 17-week record as opposed to a 16-week one. I still don't think that means the Rams aren't going to try and get him there. But he needs 12 catches to break the single season record and 136 receiving yards to break the single season record for receiving. So, I mean, against the 49ers, whose pretty much entire secondary is out for COVID, he's my top overall play this week and probably the one I'm prioritizing paying up for.
Yeah, right there with you. I mean, it's not even close. It's Cooper Kupp. No interest in Devontae Adams, no interest in Samuel. If I'm paying up this week, it's going to be Cooper Kupp, and kind of how with Taylor, it's hard to get two of these top guys in your lineup, almost impossible. You cannot get Cooper Kupp and Adams in the same lineup, and why would you want to? So if I'm paying up, it's going to be Cooper Kupp, and I'm kind of shocked at the ownership, honestly. He's coming in at 8%, which is extremely low for Cooper Kupp, as the 8th highest owned wide receiver. Is the price tag scaring some people away?
I guess so. People that's a mistake I've seen that people make in DFS in all sports is when they see a rising price tag, they just automatically say he's overpriced, but he's not. He should be more than 10,000. He's still a value at 9,700. So, yeah, I mean, I would have to assume that it's just people. People are looking and they're seeing Jonathan Taylor at 400 less, and even at the same position, Justin Jefferson is 1,600 less, and he's our highest owned right now. I think people are just looking at that and saying that they can get the similar upside and floor for a cheaper price. I still don't think that's accurate. I think he's the one you want. He's been in a tier of his own the entire season, even over people like Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson, and that says something for his price tag.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree. Let me ask you this. If Cooper Kupp was 10,000, would you still play him?
Yeah, I mean, he's 10,000 on FanDuel, and it's gonna be hard to get away from him there, and that's not even full PPR. On DraftKings site, he's just too cheap. I mean, he'd have to be somewhere up about 10.5, I think, for me before I started to really think about. Now Jefferson is a $2,400 discount. That really means something. So, yeah, I'm kind of locked in on him.
Yeah, I agree. He should be a 10K fighter for sure, or 10K player for sure. So other than that, Justin Jefferson's gaining a ton of ownership, coming in as the first owned wide receiver at 70%. I like him. I like Jefferson for sure. If I'm paying up, like I said, it has to be Cooper Kupp. But if I'm not, I don't mind some Jefferson and Deontay Johnson against Baltimore. Those are kind of the two guys. If I was not Kupp, I'd be looking towards Jefferson's way, and I'd be looking towards Johnson's way. And it looks like Deontay Johnson, the ownership might have not updated yet. I guess this afternoon it's official that he is going to be playing.
Yeah, I would expect to see his ownership rise. We're seeing him at the 18th highest owned at 5%. Against Baltimore, he's going to be higher than that. And as far as Jefferson goes, I will say, if the Vikings had something to play for this week, it would be a much tougher decision between him and Kupp. I mean, he's in an amazing spot. You know, without Thielen this year, he has a 34% target share. But the game's indoors, which is great for him. The Bears secondary can't stop him. So I still think you can play him at 8,100. But I think if you are committing to paying up for a wide receiver, even with Jefferson higher owned, I take the safety of Kupp, especially in the games where the Rams need to win.
Yep, I like it. I like, we talk about Kupp, we talk about Jefferson, Johnson. Any other guy you like up in this top range?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about Diggs being in this range, you have to, if you like Josh Allen, you have to like Stephon Diggs as well. Just the same thing, against the Jets in a pretty much a must-win for the Bills, where they're going to be all out. Diggs's target share has not been as consistent this year as it had been in the past. But it's still good. I mean, he's still got 94 catches on the year and 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. So I'm okay. I'm good playing him. I think he's in a great spot. I'll definitely be playing him in tournaments.
Yep, Diggs is good. Mike Evans sticks out. I mean, not the best match in the world, but no Brown, no Godwin. Evans, to see what is. I think Evans is for the fourth. Projected out Mike Evans this week.
Yeah, and he's practicing in full, which is big for a hamstring injury. So I guess you always worry about that re-injury risk, but I think the only thing I would say would concern me with him is how much the Bucs push their starters in this game. They've already clinched the division. They can get as high as 2. They can't drop below 4, though, so they're going to have a home game no matter what. It's just a matter of how much they care about getting 2 home games. So, I guess that's risk being introduced, but I mean, without Godwin, without Brown, how many targets is Evans going to get in this one? So at 7,100, I think there's a lot of room for value there.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of the top range there. We're talking about mid-range here. Is there any guys that you really like in this mid-range?
I love AJ Brown in this one. Davis Mills is playing well, so there's, I guess, the possibility that Houston can compete with Tennessee, especially if they're trying to play spoiler here. And I mean, we saw. The thing with Brown is there's always been that inconsistent floor with him, even as good a receiver as he is. We saw against San Francisco that 16-target game where he went off, and then last week against Miami, he had 2 catches on 5 targets as the running game took over. So you never really know how Tennessee's going to play it there, but I mean, 7,000 is too cheap for him for tournaments, I think. I'm not going to play him in cash, but he's probably my favorite tournament play in this range.
Yeah, I like that call. I didn't hate him last week against Miami. Didn't quite get there last week. It looks like he has been priced down 200, which really doesn't make sense because this is like a really good matchup for AJ Brown here. Yeah, you mentioned it, 16 targets against San Francisco. Hopefully he gets a lot of that this week compared to the 5 last week. But yeah, I think it's a good spot to go right back to AJ Brown. It looks like a lot of people are. He's coming at the second highest projected owned wide receiver at 12.81%. So a lot of people on AJ Brown. I like it as well. Great matchup, all that good stuff. Taking a look in this mid-range, A guy that is gaining some ownership and a guy that I do like is going to be Christian Kirk. Looks like Kirk is coming in as the third projected highest owned wide receiver, and that is a late game 425. It looks like Randall Moore is going to be out. Obviously, no Hopkins and Kirk 6,000. I don't hate stacking him up with Murray, maybe a double stack with Murray, Kirk, and Ertz as well. But yeah, don't mind some Kirk at this price tag. I think he's probably too cheap. 9 targets in week 17, 9 in week 16. 12 in week 15, and he has a pretty decent matchup here against Seattle. So I guess in the mid-range, Kirk is somebody that's really sticking out for me. How about you on Kirk, and then anybody else you like in this mid-range?
Yeah, love Christian Kirk in this one. The only thing that maybe keeping me off him is that I like his. You mentioned Ertz, and I think if I'm playing a piece from this game, I might like him a little bit more with his target share, which is actually considerably higher than Kirk's, even with the involvement that you just described. Neither one of their average depth of targets has been anything to write home about, but PPR site like DraftKings, you don't need that to pay off their value tags. So yeah, I could see using Kirk in both cash and in I'm definitely doing that Kyler Kirk Ertz stack that you talked about. I just can't figure out which Seahawk to run it back with yet. Penny, maybe. I mean, we didn't even talk about him in that whole running back stable that we mentioned. But as far as any others in this range, it gets a little bit slim. You have to kind of take a leap of faith with eliminated teams playing their guys fully. If they do, people like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle are in great spots. But you have to, again, trust that Brandon Cooks, same thing. You have to trust that the teams are going to play them the full game. So I'm okay with all those for tournaments, but I tend to stick in cash in this last week of the season to the safety of teams that have something to play for. So I know they're not going to pull the plug on my player early.
Yeah, and that's smart. That's how you want to do it, especially in cash. In tournaments, yeah, take some shots on these guys. I'm on Ross St. Brown, another guy that I've been hyping up the past couple of weeks, and this guy is good. And they keep pricing him up, and rightfully so. Going against Green Bay, I like it. 6,800. It's gonna be the most expensive he's been all year by a mile, but he's just been playing so good. If he does play the full game, I mean, he has a lot of upside there for the Lions. You talked about Waddle. Waddle seems pretty cheap here, 6,300. Not have a great game last week. I don't hate him. Brandon Cooks was another guy that I don't hate, 6,300 going against his Tennessee defense, who was given the most or second most DraftKings points to opposing wide receivers. But other than that, not a ton else sticking out. Is there any cheap wide receivers that you like? Because looking down, there's not a ton that sticks out to me. Bateman's interesting, 4,900, but we lost Berrios, who we've been playing the last couple weeks. That's not good. But anybody liking down low?
Well, I had Claypool as one of my key plays this week. I even wrote him up in my cash article, but that was when Deontay was on the COVID list. I still think I'm okay playing him in tournaments just because I was wrong on that guy coming in. I thought that they'd use him as such a dynamic player that he'd overcome, what we knew Roethlisberger was going to be this year, but he just hasn't. He needs a quarterback that can throw it to him downfield. But this is the matchup that Baltimore has allowed the most completions of 20, 30, and 40 yards. So, he does have 15 targets over the last 2 weeks, even with Johnson eating them all up. He hasn't done anything with them, but I kind of like taking a shot on him in tournaments against that Baltimore secondary with his big playability. And then your boy Allen Robinson again. He had 6 targets last week. Dalton is starting again. Minnesota's given up the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. He's got 6 targets in 3 straight weeks, or 3 straight games, I should say, that he's played in. So, are you okay playing him again this week?
Yeah, I like it. The matchup's great. I don't mind some Robinson. I don't think anybody's going to play him. I mean, regardless of the matchup, regardless of how cheap he is, looks like he's coming at the 39th projected highest on wide receiver. So, yeah, I don't mind going to that whatsoever this week. So he's somebody I'm looking at that's cheap. A couple other names I'll throw out to get your thoughts on. Cyril Grayson, he is 4,400. Tyler Johnson, I believe, is 4,200. And then also Antone Wesley is 4,100. Any interest in any of those three guys?
Well, not in cash, but certainly Grayson, I could be talked into if I need a cheap wide receiver, because after Antonio Brown left, literally, Grayson played 64% of snaps and got 8 targets. And if Brady's got to trust with you, then good job. And he's already Brady's already vocally said it. So that play I'm kind of leaning to being on board with as maybe a cash value, and definitely a tournament play in a position that we're really not seeing much in that low range. You like him? You like Johnson more? Who's the other one you mentioned? Oh, Wesley. Yeah, what's your thoughts on him? That's a tough one for me.
Three touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, right? So I mean, they're using him, and he's cheap. Another guy to maybe put in the offense there, maybe like in a low owned stack, because I don't think he's getting that much ownership. Looks like he is. Oh yeah, he kind of is the 13th projected highest owned wide receiver at 6%.
Yeah, I see that there. I was just looking for him too. I didn't think he'd be up that high. 4,100. I mean, you're right. For being targeted for touchdowns is big, especially in tournaments. So I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, but I think I might go with Robinson there, probably the one that sticks out the most. But yeah, like you said, Grayson as well. Other than that, like the 3K range, like nothing stick. Is there any 3K guy, like a really cheap 3K to 4K guy that sticks out to you? Because nothing's really jumping out to me.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think Robinson at 4,000 would be my absolute limit. I mean, I guess the only one that I'll say there is Amon-Ra's brother for Green Bay, just depending on how Green Bay plays this. They haven't really said anything yet, but they've clinched everything, so there's really no incentive to run anything out there. What's his name? Equanimous, right? Equanimous St. Brown?
Yeah,
it's a heck of a couple of names those guys have. He's 3,000. So if Adams is going to sit most of the game, but then again, that probably means Rodgers is too. I don't know. 3,000, there are worse plays, but I'm probably not going to do it. But it's at least viable, I think.
Yeah, something to note there. So yeah, I think that's about it for the wide receivers. Anything else we didn't mention, or you think we covered it all?
I think we're good on the wide receivers.
All right, let's get to the tight ends then. So a tight end this week going up top, the most expensive guys. We have Mark Andrews, who this guy's been like on fire, ending the season very well. He's 7,500. Kittle, he is 6,700. Gronk 6,300. It's questionable. I haven't heard anything as of recent, but I think he might play. Dawson Knox, Zach Ertz. So out of that top bunch, who are you liking the most?
Well, Andrews doesn't fit if we're talking cash, he doesn't fit the build at all. There's no reason whatsoever to commit that kind of a money to a tight end this week when you need it for the guys that we've talked about already. But, fact of the matter is that he's got 40 targets from Tyler Huntley, and he now leads all tight ends in air yards. The Ravens still have that outside shot of making the playoffs, so they're not resting anybody. So Andrews should play the full game. So, yeah, for sure in tournaments, take that. And I think if we're going back to that Pittsburgh stack you talked about, I think you got to play him in that one as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I have the salary, if I'm able to go up and get Mark Andrews, I am very happy with doing so. I mean, this guy's been on a roll as of late. I don't mind that stack that you mentioned there as well. So Andrews would be the guy I do like up top. I think Kittle's fine. Kittle's interesting, but kind of the same thing. If I was going up, it'd probably be Andrews there. Don't have any interest in Gronk. But Zach Ertz is probably going to be my guy. Between him and another guy I do like that is cheap, but I really like Zach Ertz. You talked about him when we were talking about Kirk. He's actually been getting more targets the last couple of weeks than Kirk, and he's cheaper than Kirk as well, right? 5,300, great matchup. Seattle is not good whatsoever against the tight end. So, yeah, Zach Ertz, I really, really like him this week.
I do too, and I'm like you. It's between him and a cheaper guy, and I'm guessing we're gonna say the same cheap guy. But yeah, Ertz has where are we? 9, 13, 11, and 7 targets over the last 4 weeks. Again, the average depth of target is not good, but you don't need it for cash games on a PPR site like DraftKings. He hasn't scored since week 11, but he scored twice in that, and that was against Seattle. So I am going to make every effort to have him be my cash tight end. I do have a cheap option like you if we can't do it, but he is the guy I would like to be in this week.
Yeah, I really like Ertz this week, and a lot of people do. He's coming in at the first projected highest owned tight end at 11.5%. And the next highest is going to be Tyler Higbee, who is 4K at 10%. But when we are talking the lower range, some cheap tight ends here, which one is sticking out to you the most?
It's Komet for me. Annoyingly, Jimmy Graham keeps getting involved in the red zone. But Andy Dalton starting this game is good for Komet. He's got, he's good for 5 targets every week. He hasn't had less than that since week 11. And he's had 7, 9, and 11 in 3 of the last 6 games. So at 3,400 indoors against Minnesota, that kind of price tag is, he'll let me fit like the top comfortably Cooper Kupp and, maybe another kind of mid to high price guy in there.
Yeah, he's way too cheap for how much they've been using him. Like you mentioned, 5 targets in week 17, 5 targets in week 16, 9 in week 15, 5 in week 14, 7 in week 13. He's had at least 5 targets in the last, 6, 7 games. So, yeah, they're using him a lot. This price tag really doesn't make much sense. I don't think there's like a ton of upside with Komet, but, in terms of like cash and feeling safe and, if you're going to give me 5+ targets at 3,400, so I can, go do other things I want to do in my lineup, sign me up.
Yeah. And I think we're on the same page here. We're going to try and get to Ertz, but that 1,900 savings might be precious on this slate. So, so be it. If Ertz isn't the guy, you can't call him a lock if Komet is down there. Anybody else? Anybody else on the tight end radar for you?
Yeah, one interesting one that sticks out, John Bates. It looks like Ricky Seals-Jones has been ruled out, so I don't hate some John Bates at 3K. He's another guy that I don't mind. He's coming in at the 18th or 19th projected highest owned tight end against the Giants. They're 2% there. So I guess he'd be the other cheap guy I'd look for if I needed to save the salary, but other than that, not a ton else sticks out.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. He's played almost every snap. So at 3,000, that's really all you need from some of the price tag in that range. Brevin Jordan too is all of a sudden playing, most of the snaps at tight end for Houston, and he's 2,700. So not a good matchup against Tennessee, who defends the tight end well, but 2,700 for being on the field more often than not is good too.
Yep, another cheap option there. But yeah, I think that's about it. Like it's pretty simple at tight end for me this week. Ertz up top if I can. Mark Andrews, that's great. Cole Kmet down low. Don't mind some Bates. Pretty simple at tight end this week compared to like running back where so many plays stick out.
Yeah, and this is gonna be an interesting build this week for sure.
Yep. We'll talk defenses real quick here. We'll talk about them more on Sunday. But is there any defense that's really sticking out to you on a Friday here?
I'm probably going to wind up. I shouldn't even commit. I mean, the Browns are 2,600 at home against all the Bengals backups. So, I mean, if I have some extra money, I'll see what I can do above that. But that's probably going to wind up being the way that I go. Where are you sitting? You got any? I mean, I got a few that I like more that are more expensive, but I mean, they're third in sack rate and they're facing backups, so at home. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ownership. The first 3 are actually the 3 I'm looking at. Buffalo Bills. I'd prefer them against the Jets. I really like that, but they are 3,700, so you have to pay up for them, which I don't typically do. Washington football team, they're coming in at the first projected highest own. I like them as well. They're 3,100. And then also, like you mentioned, the Cleveland Browns are the second projected highest own at 8%. And you mentioned it as well. They're very cheap. They're a really good defense. So this price tag, really doesn't make much sense. And on top of that, Bengals, no starters, all the good stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be those three for me. Whichever fits, really. I'm completely happy with paying 2,600 for the Browns. I think it's a really good spot.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I like the top three guys are the three teams that I would look to utilize. Washington is that's a tough one because they're not a good defense, but I mean, I know as well as anybody that what an absolute mess the Giants are. I've never seen it like this before. I had the Bears locked in cash last week, and that was an easy play. And this is really the same team at the same price. So I'm probably sticking with the Browns. I think I'm going to need that 500. But if I find myself with that extra money, I might go up to them.
Yeah, I completely agree. But yeah, we went through it. It should be a fun week. I'm going to have to keep up with the news. We'll talk through it game by game, kind of condense it a little bit more on Sunday. And last week of the season, exciting. Hopefully going out on a win. Then the playoffs are going to start, which that's going to be exciting as well. But yeah, hoping to end the regular season strong. Was there anything we missed? Was there anything else you'd like to add before we head out of here?
You keep playing during the playoffs, I go straight through.
Yeah, I keep playing for sure.
Yeah. Where's the fun in stopping?
I know.
Well, hopefully we have some answers on some players that are, gonna rest for sure when we talk on Sunday morning, and we'll be able to really hone our lineups down.
Yeah, for sure. Week 18 now is always going to be very crazy, but I think we talked through most of it, and then we'll go probably even more into detail and know a lot more by Sunday as well. So that's about it. See you all Sunday, 10 o'clock.